ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्दक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधम् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. In this Tuesday Atma Vichara session from Ramanacentre Center for Learning, Bangalore, we have been reading the reminiscences by Mahakrishna Swami of his presence in Ramanashramam, titled under the book Years in the Presence of Ramana, My Master, which has been edited by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. After reading this week's reminiscences and contemplating on it by Bhagavan's grace, we will have a practice of 20 minutes of self-enquiry. Following that, our President Sarada Akka would be contemplating on Ramana Gita, especially questions put to Bhagavan by Ganapati Muni and many devotees, and Bhagavan's answers to them on the subject matter of self-enquiry. And these answers given by Bhagavan have been compiled into Sanskrit verses by Ganapati Muni in the form of Ramana Gita. And then finally, after that, we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. And in the last few weeks, in the reminiscences part of Mahakrishna Swami, we have been looking at various techniques of teaching. That is what Mahakrishna Swami has observed in the presence of Bhagavan in Ramanashramam. The various approach Bhagavan had used or was practicing or was teaching. He calls them as the techniques of teaching by Bhagavan. In this week, he says, it was the custom of the adepts when they intended to go to some place, at first obtain permission from Bhagavan. But the way in which some did this was a farce. he says, was little funny or was hard to understand kind of a thing, or what was not appropriate. He says that they entered into the hall, greeted him, and said, I am going to Madras, or wherever they wanted to go. The master only said yes or kept silent. Then they left saying that they had the permission to go. If one made a definitive comment to the master, he accepted it as such. If someone said, I will take the following attitude, Ramana nodded his head, acknowledging the message. And the next thing Sri R. Natarajanji highlights, he heard the words and understood the person's decision. But this did not mean that it was approved. This is what Sri R. Natarajanji says here. He heard the words and understood the person's decision. But this did not mean that it was approved. This A.R. Natarajanji highlights of the words of Mahakrishna Swami. Continuing, but if on the contrary, someone really asked him for permission, it was different. He could consent or continue quiet. If he stayed quiet, it certainly could not be interpreted as consent. The first did not know. That means when people said, I am going to Madras, the first set of people who already had made a decision, he's talking about them. The first did not know how to ask, or more probably never had the intention of asking consent. They deceived themselves, saying that they had permission from the master, and in this way, they could do that which they had already decided to do. This is a normal thing. As we are walking in any path, there is always a branch, there is always an end of that road where we reach, where we need to take a decision to which diversion we need to go, to the right, to the left, and so forth, whenever we reach a fork. So, as we are dealing with the mind and choices, these things, these situations keep coming in front of us. That's how we can see it. And then, how do we go about taking the decision? Is the next part. If we are a devotee of Bhagavan, are we going to go to him and say what is our choice, what we have decided to choose? Or do we tell him the two choices and wait for his consent? And obviously, if his consent, now that we can say that if there is silence, how do we go about it? This is where Bhagavan's original teaching to his mother comes in very helpful. Bhagavan says, what is to happen will happen, and what is not to happen will not happen, however hard we may try to make it so. That means when choices are there, if we are in the spiritual path, having understood the Bhagavan's original teaching to his mother, that what is to happen will happen. So our goal is not to deal with these choices, whether it is choice A or choice B, whether to decide whether it is choice A or choice B. Whether our goal is not even to go to Bhagavan and tell him these are the two choices which is in front of me, what do you suggest, choice A or choice B? Because in both the cases, it shows very clearly we are still interested in the choices. Yes, Revatima? Okay. You have raised the hand. So in both of these cases, if we are going to Bhagavan and saying what is our choice, or we are asking Bhagavan, these are the two choices in front of me, what do you suggest me? Then in both the cases, we are outward turned, we are Bahirmukha, we are interested in the choices, something apart. But what Bhagavan would like is, since what is to happen will happen, and what is not to happen will not happen, if we don't worry about that external thing, but rather inquire to whom is this? It is for me, then who am I? What do I really refer to as I? If I can go back to my reality, myself, then what is to happen will happen. And how do we know that what is to happen will happen? When the right choice has been decided by which is already ordained by the Ishvara, all the things that has to happen externally, whatever the convenient environment that has to happen, will automatically fall in place. And since we have, if this body and mind is ordained to participate in that choice, it will participate. So it will do what it has to do. So we should not oneself be carried away by the activities of the body or the mind, but one should inquire to whom is this, who am I? On the contrary, if we go to the master and ask him, I have decided on this choice, or these are the two choices in front of me, what should I do? Then each of these cases, we have to understand our mind as externalized. So in each of these cases, we can say Bhagavan would find it as though he has understood our decision. That means we have decided that we have to become externalized. So it is important what Bhagavan wants us to do, to understand what Bhagavan wants us to do. Bhagavan wants us to remain in our natural state. Inquire, who am I? And get back to the reality that we are, which is, where is the choices when we see ourselves, when there is no mind, like in the deep sleep? There is absolutely no choices to be made. What remains there is only ourself. So if we can consciously sleep, what does that conscious sleep mean? We are consciously attending to our own self and consciously sleeping to all these differences, seeming differences that rise and set, that rise and set. And we let the body and the mind and the choices, which are all part of the Prakriti, play its role. We don't decide whether it has to play it this way or it has to play that way. Since it is all ordained by this Ishvara, let it play its role as it has to play. But one will be consciously sleeping to that. But one will be consciously attending to one's own self, either by inquiry to whom is this, who am I, or having recognized, after having practiced self-enquiry and after having the experience, clear identity of who oneself is, the pure being consciousness, one simply remains as that. And whatever is to happen, let it happen. So this is what Bhagavan here is communicating through this paragraph. Bhagavan Sri Ramana never encouraged people to tell him their faults. He gently guided them not to relive the past, but to investigate what they are now in the present. Past and future are mental creations. Only the eternal present exists. The problem is not the actions, but the attachment to them. This is what Mahakrishna Swami talks about. That often, if we see the mind, it is either concerned about the past or it is planning something about the future. Both of them, since the past, it cannot go and rectify anything. So it is definitely something which is imagining that it can make those corrections. Again, in the future, it has no control. 5 minutes from now, this is the exact thought I will have. Can I ever vouch and say, I am absolutely not clear what thought will be there. But after 5 minutes, I may claim that it is my thought. But right now, if it is my thought, I should be able to say that I will be getting this exact thought 5 minutes from now. So in both cases, when we are contemplating on the past or in the future, it is totally an imagination. So what is in this imagination? We are missing the now. When we say now, is it being in the present? What is being in the now? The being in the now is not like being moment to moment. That is like superimposing time on oneself. There is one who is the conscious being, and he is consciously trying to be in the now. That means there is a sense of difference of one being the conscious being, and there is an identity or acceptance that there is something called time, and one is trying to be consciously in that time. That is like superimposing time on the self. But the real being in the presence means attending to oneself. And that is either through an inquiry, to whom is this, who am I, or by a direct, simple abidance. One is not carried away by any thought. That is, one is in the silence of the mind. When the mind is in silence, when it is in the real Atma Mauna, that is the real being in the present. So as we see in these two things, these two paragraphs, whenever we are dealing with something other, either a thought or a choices, which may be something rising out of a physical experiences, either of it, there is something apart. There is a sense of something apart and something has to be done about it. So there is, the mind is Bahirmukha, and that is taken to be real, and there is a sense of attachment to that. There is no attachment to the one who is perceiving those thoughts. There is no attachment to the one who is perceiving that reality. But there is a lot of attachment to those choices. There is a lot of attachment to making the decision. Or there is a lot of attachment to the knowing and the doing, because there is an object outside. This is what these two paragraphs are highlighting for us. But what Bhagavan wants us to do is, because all of them are imaginative and not real. If they were to be real, they should be always present. But they are all transitory. They are appearing and disappearing. But to whom are they appearing and disappearing? This is the most important thing. The unchanging self, the truth, to whom they are appearing and disappearing, we completely take it for granted. So Bhagavan here, by putting the inquiry, to whom is this, who am I, uses the mind which was outward turned as an opportunity to get back to the self. And by repeatedly practicing this inquiry, to whom is this, who am I? So often in many sadhanas, we find the mind movement as a big challenge and we try to suppress it, we try to bring it under control. But in self-enquiry, we see it as an opportunity. Oh, I am going out in the outward, the mind, the attention is moving out. I see that, and the inquiry makes me turn the attention, which was Bahirmukha, to Antarmukha. So instead of really fighting with the mind and trying to suppress it, we see it as a reminder, as an opportunity to turn back within. And by repeatedly practicing this, to whom is this, who am I, Bhagavan assures the mind will become silent. As and more it merges back into the self, the more and more it becomes to recognize that there is nothing ever happening in the truth. And the more and more it understands that the truth is where its real yoga kshema is, it eventually merges with that truth and remains as the truth. And so Bhagavan says, the silent mind is nothing but the self. So with Bhagavan's immense grace, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. For the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichara. And as we said in Atma Vichara, whenever a thought rises, we should diligently inquire, to whom is this? The answer will be obviously for me. This thought cannot be for anybody else. And we should diligently put the question, who am I? What do I refer to as I? Or to whom does this thought, from where from this thought has appeared? If I trace the source of the thought, or if I try to find out what is that I refer to as I, then the mind which was outward turned will turn inward and abide in the self. Though it may abide in the self by the grace of Bhagavan for only a few minutes initially, but repeated inquiry and repeated questioning will make the mind become one with that self, says Bhagavan. With this immense grace, for the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramana. More, huh? Namo
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we in this part of the satsang are meditating on the verses of Ramana Gita, which is a compilation in 18 chapters by Ganapati Muni of answers given by Bhagavan to different seekers of truth. And Muni has compiled these chapters based on the theme or the subject matter of the question and the answers. By Bhagavan's grace, we are now meditating on the questions and answers. We are going to begin meditating on the question and answers in the 17th chapter, which is on the attainment of knowledge, the attainment, jnana siddhi. Okay, so it begins like this. Panchavimshe tu divase vaidharbho vidushambara prashnayavanato bhutva munim bhuyopi prishtavan. So he says on the 25th, which is in the month of July. All these questions have been happening in the month of July July and August. We had the 10th chapter in the month of August, and then these are continuing. The 14th chapter was on the 21st of August, and 15th chapter is not mentioned in which date. Again, 16th chapter is not mentioned on which date. Only the questioners are different in 14, 15, and 16. And here, now we have the 17th chapter. See, I think that 15 and 16 are both chapters are questions by Muni. Shravana Manana Nididhyasanam is the 15th chapter, and they are both questions posed by Muni, and later it is by the earlier one, 14th chapter is by Vaidarbha on 21st of August, and the 15th and 16th chapter are continuations by Muni. Now again on 25th, we have the questions by Vaidarbha. We find that the 14th chapter, Muni has entitled as Jivan Mukti Vichara, questions by Vaidarbha. And here, this is given a different chapter heading on attainment of wisdom, jnana siddhi. And what is the difference between the two? In one sense, because Vaidarbha has posed the questions on different dates. And because of that, they may have been classified into separate chapters. The slight difference is that there we are talking about the Jivan Mukta, but here we are talking about Jnana itself. The topic is about Jnana itself. So Vaidarbha has questioned, going humbly to Bhagavan. His question is like this. Vaidarbha uvacha kramena yati kim jnanam kim kinchit dine dine kramena yati kim jnanam kinchit dine dine ekasminneva kale kim purnamabhati bhanuvat. The question is, does knowledge dawn gradually, day by day, little by little? Does knowledge dawn, or does knowledge come all at once like the rising of the sun? Purnamabhati bhanuvat, like the full sun. Bhagavanuvacha kramena yati na jnanam kinchit dine dine abhyasa paripakena bhasate purnamekada. Bhagavan says jnana does not come gradually. It comes all at once, fully, Purnam Ekada. But how does it come? Abhyasa Paripakena. By the ripening of the practice. By the ripening of the practice, knowledge dawns all at once, says Bhagavan. Bhagavan has given an example saying that if there is a cave in which there is darkness for thousands of years, and suddenly a light is brought into the cave. One day, after thousands of years, a light is brought into the cave. Will the light come all at once? Will the darkness go all at once? Or will the darkness go away gradually, says Bhagavan. The darkness will go away all at once. But Vaidarbha has a question. He says it looks in his question, from his question, it appears as if to say, it looks like knowledge comes gradually because Abhyasa Kale Bhagavan Vrittim Abhyasa Kale Bhagavan Vrittir Antarbahistata Yata Yatam Prakurvana Yate Kimyanamuchyate Abhyasa Kale Bhagavan Vrittim Antarbahistata Yata Yatam Prakurvana Yate Kimyanamuchyate. Vaidarbha is asking Bhagavan, you are saying knowledge comes all at once. But during practice, when one is doing self-enquiry, what happens? This I thought, the ego or the I thought. See, Bhagavan has defined the mind as the I thought. Bhagavan says there are, what is the mind? Mind is only thoughts. If there are no thoughts, can we say something is something defined as the mind? Can we define something as the mind when there are no thoughts? So one may say mind is only thoughts. But all these thoughts are not constant. In fact, no thought seems to be constant. Every thought is coming and going. Then how can one say there is something like a mind? If there is a station, the trains come and go. Oh, one says this is a station, trains are coming and going. But there has to be a station. A station is a stationary place, a constant place. So what is the constant in the mind? Bhagavan says it is the I thought or the I am the body thought. It is called I thought. So this I am the body thought, which Bhagavan calls the I thought, that is a common thought, that is the underlying thought. All other thoughts are for the I. What is the I normally doing? It is associating with objects, which we call thoughts. I am liking this, I do not like this, I have feelings, I have experiences, I see things, I don't see things, I see things with my physical eyes, I see things with my mental eye. When I imagine something, I see things within my mind. Sometimes I hear things outside, sometimes I hear things within my mind. But it is always with relation to an object. What is the meaning of turning the mind inward? Bhagavan says, whenever any association with any object arises in the form of a thought, I am having this experience. What is that experience? Experience is an object because it comes and goes. It doesn't stay all the time, whether the experience is gross or subtle. So Bhagavan says, question it. For whom is this experience? For whom is this thought? Then the answer arises, it is for me. And he says, but who is this I? When there are no thoughts, who is this I? If there is no association with any object, who is this I? Do I know this I? I know all my experiences, but do I know the I who experiences all this? Do I know this I? Question, who am I? Says Bhagavan. When we really question very deeply, who am I? Then all the other thoughts will disappear. Because whenever a thought arises, Hare, this is only a thought. This is only an object which I am experiencing. But who am I? When this question becomes deeper and deeper and very intense in us, what will happen is that ultimately the other thoughts will not arise. Because even if they arise, even as they arise, Array, this is only a thought. Who am I? That question will keep coming back until the I will become fully inward turned. It will become totally silent. It will stop associating with any thought because of the power of the question, who am I? And in that silence, its true nature will be revealed. So what Vaidarbha is saying is, during practice, when in this way all the thoughts disappear and pure silence is experienced, which is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, in which there is no vikalpa, there is no movement of the mind, the I has become completely turned within to its own source, to its own true nature, to its own divinity, to its own divine essence. When the I has turned back and it is abiding there, for some time it does that. Then by force of the vasanas, it comes out again. So Vaidarbha is saying, when it is inverted and when it is abiding in the self, is that point of time, is that jnana? He is asking. Because the experience is the same. Actually, Bhagavan has said in the very first chapter of Ramana Gita, Bhagavan Ramana says, if you start asking, who am I? The mind will be stilled. Whether you realize it or not, that other thoughts will disappear and you will right away experience the self. But he had already there, he had told that when it is intermittent, when the experience of the self is intermittent, when it comes and goes, it is called abhyasa. So here also, Bhagavan reiterates that is not jnanam. When the mind is inward turned, when it stays in its source, it is not jnanam. Antaryata Bhagavanuvāca Antaryata Matir Vidvan Bahir Ayati Chet Punaha Antaryata Matir Vidvan Bahir Ayati Chet Punaha Abhyasameva Tamahur Jnanam Janubhavochyataha. Even though the mind is turned inward and abides for some time in the self, such interning should be termed only practice. Because jnana is, it is achyuta anubhava. Achyuta means that which does not change, that which is uninterrupted, says Bhagavan. So steady abidance in the self alone, Bhagavan defines as knowledge of the self. Coming and going of the experience, Bhagavan says, is practice. Now, practice must be held on to until the point when jnana is steady. Until the point when the mind does not rise at all, when it is totally merged in the pure silence, in the pure peace of the self, in its own divine source, in its own divine nature, which does not have a second, in which there is no object, in which there is no division whatsoever. So one has to get back to that source and abide there. And until the abidance is steady, practice must be continued. It must be recognized to be practice. If by chance, by Bhagavan's grace, we have a glimpse of or a taste of the self, one must not stop there thinking, I have got a taste of the self, now I know my true nature. No, on the other hand, one must remain steadily abiding over there until nirvasanena maunena, Bhagavan has described in the earlier chapter. So there should be no more rising, need for the mind to rise. There should be no more need for thought to rise at all. Until that point of time, the inquiry, the practice must be continued. And that happens by the grace. It automatically, once one has started asking the question, who am I? Once one has started having the need to get back to one's own true source, then that grace will hold us until the steady abidance takes place. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Akka.
Namo.
Apara Satchit Sukhavarirashi Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihidam Hrudi Chintayami Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami.